What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The second generation of Chrysler 300C debuted in 2011 and reached us about a year later. However, if the predecessor received, albeit limited, but popularity due to its rough, but charismatic appearance, and sold out in our official circulation of two with a little more than 1,000 cars, the sales of the successor were almost an order of magnitude lower. Therefore, it lasted in Russia for only a couple of years. In 2014, the model disappeared just because of unsatisfactory sales. In addition, it did not catch the era of moderate duties before 2008, and in fact, we have a lot of first 300C thanks to private grey imports. It was pointless to bring fresh cars under the full duty, so peace offers up to 1 million rubles inclusive imply Belarusian, Armenian, and any other accounting, which does not allow you to drive the car normally in Russia. In addition, it is worth remembering that such cars were usually bought in the U.S. beaten and brought for restoration. In general, saving 300,000 seems extremely doubtful. Moreover, the prices for dealer cars do not look high. At one time 300C cost new 2.3 million rubles, and now it has halved in price, which looks quite decent against the background of other 10-year-old budget sedans, which are now trying to sell at the purchase price. The 300C was not distinguished by outstanding corrosion resistance in the first generation, and the second generation inherited this feature. Of course, we are not talking about serious body problems. These cars have not lived to see them yet due to their age and residual value. However, there are enough trifles. Mainly small pockets of corrosion appear on the edges of body elements. Bottoms of doors, inner edges of the hood, wheel arches, all these areas should be examined with special fondness. A specific disease was rust, crawling out from under the outer door handles, especially front ones. Here it also originates on the edge of the hole for the handle fastening and spreads in both sides, outward and inward of the door. Because of this, the doors were even replaced under warranty, with the transfer of the stuffing into a new element. An additional nuance associated with such a replacement is the plate with VIN, pasted on the driver's door. It was either reglued or simply given to the owner, so it is worth checking its presence. No one has cancelled typical operational defects, and in addition, deep chips on the hood, sills, arches, and windshield frame can bloom quite quickly. The trunk lid is deprived of a platform of a license plate. Here it is necessary to pay attention only to a zone around an emblem and an additional stoplight. Floors of salon will be not superfluous to check on dryness. The optional panoramic roof not often receives censures because of leaks, but problems are still possible. Well, and the bottom will also require attention. Ground clearance of only 140 mm provides the owner with not boring life in winter, and restrictions in summer, and small damages here are quite probable. Given its propensity to develop pockets of corrosion, it's especially important to find a car with no major accidents in its history. The good news here will be the age already mentioned at the beginning. In Russia, it is almost impossible to meet a car bought beaten from an auction in the USA. All cars here are white, so you can avoid spending money on checking the history by Carfax and limit yourself to checking with the help of local services, such as Autoteca, to make sure that there are no serious accidents, legal restrictions, bans, and so on. However, there is a spoon of tar. It is the price and availability of body parts. Judging by the volume of the secondary market, the second generation 300C has become a rarity in our country, cleaner than another Alfa Romeo, so it's not worth it at all to rely on scrapyards. And some body parts and external parts such as optics cost a lot of money. If for the hood, available non-original substitutes for 13 to 25,000, and the front wing by the same method can be bought for 4,000. Then the trunk lid will have to order from foreign scrapyards, because the price of 70,000 does not correspond to expectations. The bumper, even in the non-original version, costs about 25,000, and the rear one has no replacements at all and will cost 50,000 rubles. Those who have not changed the rusting door under warranty have only to repaint the existing one. There is no sense to buy a second hand one for 15,000, and a new one costs under 100,000. Headlights are also extremely expensive. Bi-xenon head optics has a six-figure price tag. However, in the world 300C is not exclusive. In Italy it was sold as Lancia Thema, and experience shows that almost everything can be ordered at reasonable prices from foreign dealers. True, you will have to search and wait. Chrysler 300C 2011-15. The Chrysler LD platform is a derivative of the LX on which the first-generation 300C was based. However, owners often write more simply, front suspension from Mercedes W220, rear suspension from W211. And it is necessary to tell, do not lie, designs of suspensions here are really the same, double wishbone in front and multi-lever behind. Moreover, spare parts from Daimler can be useful in repair. The same silent blocks are selected from Mercedes, which in some cases turns out to be cheaper and easier. But the reworking of the suspension means that there is no unification of parts with the first generation, so it is not worth counting on its popularity. This explains the lack of non-original components, because of which the repair can be overhead. For example, the front lower arm complete with a ball bearing costs about $40,000, and separately the ball is not offered. The original front shock absorber costs $18,000 to $20,000, and for about the same money you can buy a part from Bilstein. But the stabilizer struts here are identical with the first generation, so you can buy them not for $5,000, but from 500 rubles per piece. At the back, the levers can be overlapping, which here are 5 on one side. Many people do not like to pay $4,000 to $8,000 for each, which makes them pick up silent blocks. Shock absorbers here are cheaper, about $12,000 for a piece, and about absence of adjustable shock absorbers in us it is possible not to regret. All the same, to pay $45,000 for one would be few. In general, it is definitely worth paying attention to the suspension when examining the car. The German con brakes have been transferred to the second generation from the predecessor with minor changes. For example, brake mechanisms with discs are interchangeable. There are several brake options depending on the engine, so the basic cars are satisfied with simple front single-piston calipers with a floating bracket and 320mm discs, but as the power increases, the calipers grow up to 2 or 4 piston, and their diameter of discs up to 360mm. For Russian cars, however, it is not too relevant, because we had no possibility to choose the engine, and therefore we can talk about powerful brakes only from the point of view of possible tuning. But prices for consumables are quite acceptable. For example, discs can be bought for $5,000 to $6,000, and both original and high quality analogs are available for this money. Steering on the second-generation 300C has received electro-hydraulic amplifier instead of purely hydraulic one, and it is worth to pay attention to it when checking the car. The matter is mainly in the cost of the electric pump, closely approaching 100,000 rubles. Increased noise or vibrations at work, a reason for a good bargaining. But the restored lathe is cheap, at the level of repair cost, about $20,000 to $25,000. The 300C buyers did not have to choose a gearbox. In any case, it was an automatic. In our case, it is an alternative gearbox 8 HP 45 from ZF, the same as on a relative oil car Dodge Challenger 8-speed automatic. Is quite good from the point of view of reliability and resource, but it is rather complicated in design and expensive in repair. It is necessary to remember about it both at purchase and at operation. Clearly problematic unit will give itself out by howling and rumbling, but even if the box works quietly, you should not save money on diagnostics. As it is supposed to modern automatic transmission, 8 HP 45 is demanding to oil cleanliness, so it is better to change it every 30 to 40,000 kilometers and not to save on replacement of filter in a sump to hope for resource of 200 to 250,000 before the first opening. Of all the variety of motors installed under the hood of 300C, only one is relevant for us, 3.6-liter V-shaped 6-family Pentastar. It goes without saying that in the USA the model was equipped with V8 Hemi motors for 5, 7, and 6 liters, and in Europe a 3-liter diesel engine was offered, but all this was not brought to Russia, not that capacity of the market. However, V6 quite covers the demands of the overwhelming majority of owners. It gives out 286 horsepower without any supercharging. We will not speak about transport tax in 40,000 rubles. It is good at least that the expense can be put in 15 liters per 100 if desired. The motor with the Index 9 ERB is quite modern. FCA Concern has introduced this line of Pentastar in 2010. Of course, the engine is fully aluminum, with chains in the timing, hydrocompensators, and phase adjusters on the inlet and outlet, but with conventional distributed injection. It is also quite affordable to maintain it. Timing service will cost $12,000 to $15,000 without taking into account the cost of work. The phaser regulator can be bought original for $7,000 to $8,000, injectors, $5,000 per piece, and so on. In general, the motor will not require too much money and at the same time has all chances to pass more than 300,000 kilometers with good maintenance. Well, now, having briefly sorted out what the owner of Chrysler 300C of the second generation can offer, it is possible to draw a conclusion about expediency of purchase and to form a portrait of an optimum copy. On a background of ancestor, this sedan looks more modern and more expensive, though a part of charisma as it has grown up and lost. But at a look at this car nobody will have a question for what was paid $1 million, and technical simplicity promises good residual resource even taking into account the age approaching to 10 years. Well, and to break your head over a choice especially will not have to. In the market it is still real to find a well-groomed car with a mileage up to 150,000 kilometers from the first owner, approximately like this, and if all promises of the seller will be true, 300C can be considered a very good way to enter the American automobile culture. And there, look, and to V8 Hemi not far. In conclusion, the Chrysler 300C2 remains a striking choice for those seeking a blend of style and performance, even years after its initial release. Priced at 1.3 million rubles, it offers a unique appeal that can still turn heads on the road. However, potential buyers should weigh the pros and cons carefully, considering factors such as maintenance costs and availability of parts. If you value a charismatic design and a comfortable ride, the Chrysler 300C2 could be a worthy investment. Ultimately, it's about finding the right balance between nostalgia and practicality.